I've been asked today to give a very quick, simple, easy explanation of a very complicated and difficult subject. So I apologize if this may seem a little short. But you can get the whole explanation in my book, The Theoretical Basis of Taijiquan, which gives an elaborate explanation of what I'm going to talk about today. There's a lot of aspects of Taijiquan, so many of them that different teachers can concentrate on various ones and not be blamed for leaving certain things out, because it's just impossible to cover everything at any one time. This, however, I think is one of the most important aspects of Taijiquan, because it is definitive of what Taijiquan is. Many of the other aspects of Taiji are shared by other martial arts. Other martial arts use Chansu Jing, they use correct breathing, they use rooting, they use all kinds of things. But what is definitive of Taijiquan is what is contained in its very name, Taijiquan. How do you make a Taiji? Now you can find a lot of kind of simple explanations of this. The problem is that Taiji operates in the three dimensions of real space, and therefore it has to create a Taiji that is balanced in every direction. That's the complicated part of it. To do that, you need to create a kind of fractal system of Taijis, and I'll try to explain that today. First, let me just explain the basic concept. Taijiquan cannot be done alone. No matter how many beautiful performances you have seen of people doing the form, that does not define Taijiquan, and it doesn't even give you a clue as to whether the person doing it is any good at Taijiquan. Because Taijiquan is something that you do with another person. And in fact, with that other person, if he doesn't do Taijiquan with you, you are going to find yourself trying to do Taijiquan, but actually injuring the other person instead. This is the real problem. So if things look cooperative in Taijiquan, it's because they are. Because it is extremely hard to learn these skills, even with both people cooperating as hard as they possibly can. Once the skills are learned, then they can operate with a stranger on the street. You can do all kinds of things. But you cannot perfect this in a chaotic martial situation. And this is really true of all martial arts. No martial art is without cooperation on some level. Even if the cooperation is very simple, like we're not going to stab each other in the eyes or kick each other in the groin or things like this, this is still cooperation. The more sophisticated the martial art, the greater the cooperation has to be. Because when you have just a simple elevation of athletic ability, this is something that you already know how to do, but you just learn to do a little bit better. This does not require a lot of cooperation to learn. But when you have something that is a retraining of basic instincts, especially basic fighting instincts, which really come into play when somebody actually attacks you, this requires a huge amount of cooperation in order to actually learn. And I will show you the basic concepts. Now, first, the basic concept of making a Taiji. Let's just show it super simple here, like this. If we have 2 points, like this, okay, those 2 points can operate in a completely chaotic, crazy way, or they can operate in a very cooperative way. Now, the way we cooperate is, if I push in on his hand like this, he retreats. In other words, he yields to me here, and he tries to find the emptiness on this side. So, if we are cooperating, we are trying to create a thing which has a feeling of a point of focus and balance in the center of these 2 points. That means if I move my hand out to here, he should move his hand out the equivalent amount. If he moves his hand in, I should move mine in. In other words, we always want to keep this point right in between us. Now, when we cooperate very much doing this, and I should mention, if we just stop, the whole process disappears. You can only have Taiji in a dynamic situation. So it means neither of us are trying to be perfect. We're just trying to continually adjust. So in this case, we can feel like we have created a kind of real ball in between us. Now, if one of us moves in and the other doesn't, it feels like the center of the ball moves over to here. This causes the whole thing to go off center like this, okay? So neither of us actually want this. Both of us want the center to stay in the same place. Then we can have this feeling that there is a kind of mutual pressure between us, which can sort of push us both backwards. This is the basic concept of a taiji. Now, if we want something more martial, we replace these two hands with a ward-off and two hands. Now it's same thing, 2 points, but now we have a very realistic fulcrum. It's actually in the center of his arm here. And it's the same fulcrum for both of us. Now I've called this the wooden ball, that it feels like we have a wooden ball in between us. And that ball has several qualities. We can feel like we're on top of the ball. We can feel like we're under it. And we can feel like the ball slides from side to side. In fact, if we're both being correct, the ball will feel completely slippery and mobile, because neither of us are trying to fix it in the middle. So don't think we're trying to create a kind of fixed thing. We're trying to create a fulcrum that is fixed, but a ball that is continuously moving and rotating, and we must follow this, okay? Now, this is the simplest level on which to understand the taiji. But you say, wait, what if he pushes in with his wrist, and when I try to return this, he's not interested in keeping the fulcrum in the same place. Instead of retreating with his elbow, which would keep the fulcrum here, suppose he just resists with the elbow. So when I try to return it, now I feel 2 points, neither of which want to move. But this means I have found a balance in between the 2 points, because I have equal pressure on either side. That equal pressure on either side, if the fulcrum is correct, will find his double weight very easily. In other words, he will feel like he's trapped right in between his 2 feet, and he'll feel uprooted on his heels. Now, if there's more pressure on one side, like this, and I try to push, the force will always fall that direction, this way. In other words, if I want to create a balance, there I found his double weight. Now, this means that your perception of the fulcrum has to be extremely accurate. In other words, if I have pressure a little bit more here than here, okay, so this actually moves the fulcrum over, and I think that it's in the right place, then when I try to do the rest of the situation, it will spin off to the side, and I will not have a correct balance. So I want to balance these 2 points perfectly. But these 2 points can only be balanced perfectly if the actual points on the hands are balanced perfectly. In other words, I don't want to just be arbitrarily pushing him like this, but I want to find the flattest surface on both sides. And now, this is extremely important. This is what I call the metal ball. But your force must not try to go through the ball and into his body, like this. This means your hand has a tendency to want to slide on him like this. My force from the hand must go directly into the surface of his body. If the surface of his body happens to correspond with the rest of his body, fine. But if it doesn't, that's where it should go. In other words, right now I feel like the force from my hand is going down at an angle like this. The force from this hand will depend on how he turns his wrist. If he turns his wrist over like this, my force will feel like it goes down like this. If he turns it over like this, it'll feel like it goes up like this. If he turns it like this, it'll feel like it goes right to him. But I don't care. I just want to follow that. Now this feels like, now I have 2 little balls under my hands. Now he's trying to do the same thing, but it's a little bit easier with hands than with the rest of the body, because the hands are very sensitive. So now, when I do something, it may look to you like I have pushed out with my arms this way, but I haven't. In other words, he never feels the hands slide on him like this, but he feels them still sticking into him. This gives rise to this concept that I can feel like I'm under the ball, which would make it very obvious that I could balance these points and discharge him, right? But also, if I'm over the ball and he resists upward. This goes, and I feel like I'm sort of, oh. Now the reason he went this way is he leaned a little. There's a big thing in taijiquan about leaning, that you should never ever lean. The reason is, that's okay. When the opponent leans, you really want him to lean, actually. But the point is that if he leans, go ahead.
Leans?
Yeah. You have to let him go. Now leaning doesn't just mean bending over like this. He can bend over like this, and he's not leaning. Just bend over.
Bend over?
This way. This is not necessarily leaning. Leaning means I feel like I try to balance these points, and somehow even all of the points seem like they're still falling forwards like this. When that happens, go ahead, I let him. That creates a wave, and I keep this wave going, and finally use it against him. Okay? So this involves the final ball. We have two metal balls here. We have a wooden ball here. And I must balance the fulcrum of this wooden ball with the floor. And that creates what I call an air ball. Now we have a three-dimensional balance. When you stick to the metal ball, it feels like it goes directly into the surface. So it's following a surface. If that surface moves in a strange way, you have to follow it in the same strange way. When we create the wooden ball, it feels like it adheres a line that goes up and down like this. So it feels like it's kind of like sliding up and down a pole, like you have something balanced and it's going like this. When I create, in other words, this is a three-dimensional kind of feeling because it's everywhere. This is a two-dimensional feeling. But finally, if I balance it with the floor, then it feels like it can't go anywhere. It can't slide up and down, but it focuses right on his center. Once it focuses on the center, oh, here we go. Then it can be used. Okay. So the strange thing is, I am actually not trying to force this to happen. In other words, if he insists on pushing off to the side, that wasn't to the side, push to the side, miss me. If he misses me, go ahead, there's no way I can force this to come back in front of me and use it. I have to keep playing. So this is what it means when it says the spirit is the cat and the mouse. The classic says the form is the falcon and the rabbit. It's like I have him like this, but the spirit, I can't force that. I can't just make myself aim at him. I have to keep playing, and he has to keep attacking. When he keeps attacking, finally it naturally centers, and then you get this nice discharge. That's the explanation in a nutshell. I know it's difficult, but it takes years. Thank you.